Greetings to everyone and a very warm welcome to the Venture Out events presented by CGIAR's Accelerate for Impact platform. I'm Megan Steele, your host for today's webinar. Our focus today is on entrepreneurship in agribusiness, cultivating success from seed to harvest. As part of CGIAR's commitment to driving innovation impact, the Accelerate for Impact platform is very excited to introduce this mini-series of Venture Out events exploring complementary approaches to agri-technology transfer. Our featured speaker today is Maurice Moloney, founder at Agritecknowledge, who will lead us through the journey of transforming innovations into ventures and delve into a success story of building and collaborating with sustainable agribusiness. Venture Out events are organized by CGIAR's Accelerate for Impact platform, a venture space powered by the Alliance Bioversity-CIAT and CIAT. A4IP aims to co-design, accelerate, and de-risk investments in technologies for sustainable agriculture and climate action, fostering creative engagement with the private sector and non-traditional partners. This webinar is part of a mini-series for Venture Out events dedicated to broadening the perspectives of technology transfer in agri-food systems. Across 3 30-minute events this month, we are showcasing various approaches to realizing impact from scientific endeavors. In doing so, innovators can equip themselves to better comprehend the potential of technology transfer in navigating their research concepts from the lab to the market. Venture Out aims to stimulate learning, foster connections, and inspire an entrepreneurial mindset among CGIAR scientists and collaborators. Alongside the success story of our guests and your active participation, we aim to ignite a more extensive conversation around technology transfer. So with that, I'm encouraging your involvement in this event. Please share your questions, feedback, and comments in the Zoom Q&A function for us to incorporate into the upcoming discussion. But first, we'll extend a warm welcome to Maurice Moloney, founder at Agritecknowledge, who will begin with a presentation on nurturing success from seed to harvest through entrepreneurship in agribusiness. Welcome, Maurice.
Well, thank you very much, Megan, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm just going to share my screen, and then we'll roll into this short presentation. Should be coming up about now. All right. There we go. Okay, so to everybody, thank you for the opportunity to speak at this webinar about the role of technology transfer in innovation and commercial activity. As we are today under the auspices of CGIAR Venture Out, I thought it might be useful to use as an example our work on food security in developing countries. And in this case study, I'll speak specifically about a Canadian project in Ethiopia in which we were involved initially for 5 years, but it ended up as a 10-year project all told. So technology transfer does not happen spontaneously. It's also a process rather than an event. In developing countries, we learned the importance of transfer of what we would call appropriate technology. I refer back to Ernst Schumacher's Small is Beautiful book from quite a long time ago, but technology that can actually be used by the recipients. The need for ongoing support to bed in the new technology, being prepared to teach specific skills to the recipients of the technology transfer. Occasionally targeted financial resources are required, and you'll see examples of that in my talk. We built metrics for success, so we could actually understand if we were making any progress at all as we went through this program. And finally, because we're interested in sustainability, an exit strategy that would eventually guarantee that the program was successful and could continue without further interventions. So all of those things we felt were quite important in making technology transfer stick and work in a functional manner. The work that we did was focused on a region known as the Southern Nations, Nationalities and Peoples region, the SNNPR. I know it's a baffling regional name, but it's the home to 11 million people and mostly rural in the southwest corner of Ethiopia. So you can see where that is on this map. Now, if you take a look at the map, you'll see this is a map showing a particular problem, and that's stunting in children. And when we began this, the leader and founder of our project, Dr. Carol Henry at the University of Saskatchewan, she's a nutritional scientist. She'd been researching food security in this region and saw these statistics on childhood stunting. It troubled her greatly. The Ethiopian statistics showed that the SNMPR, this region in the southwest, had poor status with respect to stunting, with children 5 to 10% smaller in stature than World Health Organization averages. So that really was the driver for initiating this project. The project was funded by the Canadian International Development Agency through IDRC, the research arm of it. And we had 4 key objectives. Invoke large-scale positive changes in food and nutritional security in southwestern Ethiopia, to build sustainable and self-propagating systems, which would provide novel economic activity, but also employment. The empowerment specifically of women farmers. Women do an awful lot of the work on farm in Africa, as you all know, but don't necessarily have control of all the resources. So we tried to change that paradigm a little bit, and to work with local partners in order to integrate the agricultural piece with the nutritional piece. Now, most stunting is related to nutritional status in childhood, specifically insufficient high-quality protein in the diet. And we needed to find a protein crop that could be easily introduced into the current rotations with teff and maize. And ideally, it had to be a crop that could be planted in September or October, and then could be harvested 90 to 100 days later. So a short season legume fitted the bill. And we had quite a lot of expertise at the University of Saskatchewan in chickpeas. And so we proposed that as a break crop. So what about chickpeas? Why are they so useful? They fit the bill because, first of all, they're high protein, high fiber seed. The plant itself is nitrogen fixing. It's a short season crop, typically maturing in 90 to 100 days. It therefore fits into the rotation with teff, corn, even soya. And from a food point of view, it's actually popular during fasting days in Ethiopia. Fasting days aren't like Ramadan, they're just no meat days, but there are 180 of them a year. And so people do have to switch to a vegetarian diet quite frequently. And so the importance of getting good quality protein during that period. It was clear, however, they needed better germplasm and drought-tolerant lines. The yields at that point, when we moved in, were roughly 700 kilograms per hectare. And it thus wasn't particularly popular with farmers because they felt like it was a crop that didn't deliver everything that they needed. However, even if we had better germplasm, and we did have some good seed collections at the University of Saskatchewan that we could provide, you won't achieve the yield potential of the crop without good agronomy. And so we had to find ways of facilitating an increase in mechanized field operations. And this is where a small financial intervention took place. There's a lease to buy scheme for simple tractors in Ethiopia and basic equipment. And they can be owned collectively, so multiple farms have access to the one set of equipment. And our working assumption was that if we could reach profitability, then more equipment could be bought. So what we discovered was there were some farmers that were really good adapting their fields to this crop. And we performed seed scale-up with these farmers. We did block trials to identify the best lines, but it became also clear that nitrogen was going to be one of the limiting factors for yield. And it was obvious that we needed to develop some kind of means by which we could guarantee that we could guarantee an appropriate level of nitrogen. So we began to work with researchers at Hawassa University and developed a screening system for accessions of bradyrhizobium, which is the symbiotic organism that fixes nitrogen in chickpeas. We provided originally some isolates that are some finished products from Canada. But in fact, once we put the technology in place in the university to screen these lines, then they were able to find local soil samples that provided bradyrhizobial lines that were more efficient than the best commercial lines that we had provided them with. In the end, this created a new inoculant company, Agribusiness Biotech, and they're growing from strength to strength each year. So this was basically how we began to increase the nitrogen content of the roots and increase the yield in the crop. Now, much of the work that was performed on at a pilot scale had gone well, but in order to have the major effect that we were talking about on nutrition in this whole provincial region, we needed much larger acreages. And this required a number of different things: larger scale trials, demonstration plots that farmers could come along and see, and we also ran farmer training days to transfer the various pieces of agronomic technology that were coming from our agronomists. Once it was clear that the crop would actually yield 3 tons per hectare, and we got quite a few fields that went up to that level, it grew exponentially with the farmers. Going from 700 kilograms to 3 tons makes a lot of difference. However, the key dependency then was the supply of certified seed, which was coming from the grower cooperative, which were the best, initially the best farmers. However, they were ramping up pretty steadily. And so in a year or 2 years, we were able to keep up with demand for the seed. Now, with all that, that's the supply side of the project, and it was growing successfully. But we didn't have a clear path to the consumption of our new source of protein to achieve the nutritional benefits in children that we were hoping for. And to achieve this, we needed a local partner that already had at least rudimentary capacity to develop new products and distribute them. And this was when we met the enigmatically named Guts Agro. It's a local seed processor near Hawassa, and they were making flours from dry seed, basically milling, from a variety of different grains. But they had larger ambitions to become a food, a fully integrated food company. So this is Guts Agro, and they had very basic facilities to start out with, but we found, for example, a second-hand extruder, and we could include that into their range of equipment that they could use. And they began to develop a range of different products with some of the technology that we helped to technology and equipment that we helped to transfer. The simplest one is a chickpea porridge, and that chickpea porridge is especially made for kids. It's quite popular with the kids. It can be flavored in a number of different ways. And that was also introduced through the health centers that that looked after mother and child around the provinces. The extrusion equipment allowed us to make extruded snacks, and those extruded snacks actually became quite popular with what you might say the not infants but young people who would quite happily pop a few of these on their way to walking to school, for example. And ultimately we were able to produce a dehydrated product, a chickpea ragu called shiro, which basically is a convenience food. It could be just rehydrated on fasting days to get a quick, ready meal of high nutritional quality. And that was already including all the wonderful Ethiopian spices that are used in shiro. So as the scale of production grew, the challenges became more around distribution. There was certainly demand, but how do you get the product to the people? And this was solved by using specially designed bicycles with a canopy that could be used either for direct delivery or even as a pop-up shop in nearby villages and marketplaces. And this helped to increase distribution and sales quite substantially. It also employed a cohort of over 30 local women who then received a modest salary and commission on sales. So that was really our very low-tech solution to distribution in an area that was, basically about 100 square kilometers around the epicenter of this. So the moment eventually arrived when we realized that this supply chain was working and did not require significant repeated intervention from the Canadian scientists and engineers. We could actually stand back and see the machine functioning all by itself. And just a list of technologies that were transferred and the outcomes. Obviously, you heard about the elite seed lines that we provided. Initially, the farmer cooperative produced those, but eventually it became a breeding operation for certified seed, and so they were improving for local conditions. We had agronomy training, which we talked about. That agronomy training contributed to probably about a fourfold increase in yield in many of the fields to getting up to 2.5 to 3 tons per hectare. The mechanization part probably didn't do anything you couldn't have done, but it accelerated the scale up significantly because we could work on a lot more fields, a lot more surface area quickly. The screening technology for nitrogen fixation clearly increased yields. And also it increased yields in the follow-on crop because there was so much nitrogen in the soil after harvest that even the teff planted as a follow-on grew to higher yields, and it created this new inoculant company. The seed processing and extrusion technology helped to increase the scale, helped to develop novel products, and ultimately made a significant contribution to this ambitious company, Guts Agro, that have been growing steadily for many years now. And then the application of advanced nutritional science, which was Carol Henry's major skill set, that has now had a measurable effect on stunting in children in the catchment area. It took about 5 years before you could really see statistical differences, and there are probably multiple factors that contributed to this, but we're pretty sure that this introduction of the break crop and the products that came out of it contributed significantly to that reduction in stunting. And then, something like this doesn't happen without a lot of dedicated people. I've mentioned Carol at the University of Saskatchewan, who's the founder and project leader. Shaleme Bayeni at Hawassa University was really the driver on the Ethiopian side, especially with the technologies that were developed within the university. On the Saskatchewan side, we had agronomists, we had food scientists, engineers, and all of them interacting with counterparties in Ethiopia, either at Hawassa University or in the companies like Guts Agro. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope I didn't go on too long, Megan, but I think my take-home point here is that in technology transfer, if it is possible, rather than taking a single technology, but to concentrate on an entire supply chain and find where the technology transfers will facilitate the full integration of a supply chain, one is more likely to arrive at a point whereby you can say, we can step back now and let this machine run on its own. And that's really what happened with this project. So
thank you so much, Maurice. Thanks. That was a great initial deep dive into the success story of agri-entrepreneurship. And I think you hit the nail on the head with that last take-home point, that technology transfer is not just a one-off, but really a whole systems approach. So to our live participants, please submit your questions and reflections now into the Zoom Q&A function. With this condensed format, we have just a few minutes for the really high-level Q&A, but we're really looking forward to carrying on this discussion, past this event. So be sure to reach out to us if we have any unanswered questions. So meanwhile, I'll kick off the discussion just by trying to link a little bit of the success story you shared with the environment of CGIAR scientists. So you shared a really great story of a creation of these different companies and ventures as means of transferring the technology. How can scientists like those at CGIAR identify these opportunities in their own research? And how do they know when something like venture building is the right strategy to scale their innovation?
Right. It's a tough question, Megan. I'll tell you what you've just asked, but I'll try and address it in a number of ways. I think the thing that Carol did most successfully is to identify the endpoint goal first. So what are we really trying to achieve here? There's lots and lots of problems to solve, but when she's a nutritionist, she saw the nutritional issue and she looked at the stats and said, we got to be able to do something about that. She's not an Aggie, but she was able to get the Aggies together to say, how could we find something to be able to tackle this problem? So I think the first thing is to be able to identify the problem that one is trying to address and then work back from it, and to a large extent, build a hypothetical staircase of technologies and staircase of interventions that would then be able to tackle the problem. That's why it's hard, because not everybody has necessarily got all of the background to be able to say, that's the problem we want to solve. So in other words, in CGIAR, it could be that somebody says, we want to grow more beans. Well, yeah, we want to grow more beans, and there's lots of ways in which we might be able to grow more beans. But the question is, why do we want to grow more beans? Or to look at it another way, why wouldn't we grow more lentils? So you've got to ask the question. It's not a single step, grow more beans. It's what are we trying to achieve at the end? And so how could CGIAR scientists do that? I think that's by talking to your colleagues right across the piece and building those alliances of different skill sets, so that in a sense, what you're already doing by identifying the scientists, the engineers, the agronomists and so on, that you could envisage a whole supply chain.
Great, thanks. I think that's a really great, framework to understand. It's really collaborative. We have to have a multi-stakeholder approach and involve a lot of people in these processes. And so perhaps it's a bit of a similar answer, but we have a question here in the chat from Alpha Jusu, and he asks, is your organization an NGO? And more so, how do you ensure post-project continuity?
Right. So I should easily answer. our current organization, Agritechnology, is not an NGO. It's a for-profit agribusiness company, and we do lots of different things with lots of people. The project that I described, we did it while I was the director of the Global Institute for Food Security in Canada. And being a Canadian entity, we were eligible then to obtain Canadian funds in order to do it. When we participated in this project, in a sense, I've only told you about a fraction of the participants. And the good news is CGIAR was involved in this, because we had people from ICRISAT who were helping us as well with the germplasm and agronomy of chickpeas, for example. So there are a lot of other participants in this, but initially we didn't know who were going to be the ecosystem that would step up. But CGIAR had a very significant role, or CGIAR scientists had a very significant role in this.
We have another question that focuses more on primary producers and their sort of positionality in the value chain. How can we prioritize growers and people in context, ensuring that in something like agribusiness, they're getting their share of return on investment? Yeah.
So I think a number of factors. First of all, farmers the world over are actually quite similar, and they do see what they are doing. Once they go beyond just self-sufficiency for their family, then it's a business, and so they're always looking for a means by which that business can be more profitable. And we found exactly the same thing in Ethiopia. There was real keenness, for example, to come to these farmer training days and development days, so they could actually learn basic agronomic techniques that didn't require some big investment in order for them to achieve it. But I think what was interesting there is, for example, the best farmers, they ended up becoming the certified seed suppliers. So they had a little business right there. They were making money selling seed to everybody that was involved in the expansion of this. And so the other aspect I mentioned, empowering women. So women in Ethiopia often do all the work, but didn't necessarily have the control of the resources. And in this project, we purposely, and this was Carol's leadership, we purposely intervened in a number of different ways to make sure that the decision-making and the allocation of resources was done through women with leadership capability, so we were very keen on empowering that, changing the paradigm.
Great. And it looks like we're already coming up to time, but I'll squeeze in one more question. Maybe looking beyond this success case that you presented to us, how can scientists and partners keep their eyes open for these opportunities? Where should we look, and with whom should we be having these discussions?
Right. So, the beauty of the CGIAR system is that it's got eyes and ears throughout the world, and especially in places that need step changes in their ability to feed themselves, and ultimately feeding yourself becomes generating economic activity. None of these things will function, I don't think, unless eventually it creates an economic cycle. Because if you step back from it and you don't intervene, then it'll just fizzle out eventually. And so I think identifying these opportunities must come from the centers. The centers are in touch with all of the food and agricultural needs. But I think the best way is through something like what you're trying to do right now, because you link together many different centers in order to try and identify whether there are opportunities for agricultural entrepreneurship at any part in the delivery system. But ultimately, I do believe, given the skill set, the wide range of skill sets. It's somehow getting the communication between the centers and the groups that will actually identify the best opportunities. But it's very unlikely just to be like one lab or one agronomist that comes up with a brilliant idea. It's going to be a team of 10, 15 people that have got this vision.
That sounds about right. And I think it's a great note to end on. It gives more, reason to be for events like this. So I'll use it to encourage everyone here. Please join us next week for the culmination of this technology transfer mini-series. On Thursday, February 29th, we'll explore another approach to technology transfer, focusing on capacity sharing through the training of trainers. And that's with Anne Berlin, President at Agripreneurship Alliance. Also, for those who missed last week's event, you can catch it on the Accelerate for Impact platform YouTube channel, as will be shared the event and the next one. So for more information on Venture Out events, to share your thoughts, reach out to us at Accelerate for Impact platform at the innovations@cgiar.org email address. We'll be sure to follow up on the unanswered questions. It looks like we have a lot of interest here. So I want to again give a big thanks to Maurice Moloney from Agritecknowledge for collaborating with us on this Venture Out event and shedding light on the potential for CGIAR and other scientists to pioneer new pathways to impact, like through the success case shared here in venture building. So thanks once again to everyone who joined us live, and we will see you next week.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Megan. This is a great opportunity.